I can't ever remember the government in 20 or 30 years of being in property ever passing a bill that helps the landlord.
Never, ever.
It's always been against the landlord. So bit by bit over 30 years have made it very difficult to be a professional landlord. And I think what you've done is you've taken all that knowledge from lots of different ways of being a landlord and turned it into a business. And I think that's where a lot of landlords go wrong, that they think of themselves as a property owner and how can they maximize my returns from this property. They're not thinking about it as a business.
It's a very different mindset, isn't it? And I think, very early on, I decided actually I wanted to run my own business. My first business I started was actually a cleaning business when I was a teenager. So I've always been quite an entrepreneur, always had a bit of an eye for business sense and also for, just looking outside the box a little bit and seeing what can optimise the opportunities that are around us, really.
And where did you get that from, do you think, Jo? Did you get that from your parents or is it just from you?
Not in the slightest, no. My dad was in the Navy. My mum was kind of a stay-at-home mum and did some sort of childcare stuff, but I've recently been diagnosed with ADHD, so I think I'm going to put it down to that, to be honest with you. And I think my brain runs on a whole different kind of scale to most people's. But I've always had a lot of ambition. I've always liked to try new things, and I'm excited by business. I think it can yield some really exciting opportunities. Just
take us back to when you started your lettings agency, because then you sold that, didn't you?
I did, yeah. So I started in an estate agency, working in corporates and things like that. And when my daughter started school, I wanted a job that was 9 till 5, really, that fitted in around that time rather than 8 till what was sometimes 6, 7 o'clock, 6 days a week. So I went into lettings back in the mid-2000s and worked for several different companies, and then decided when I was going to start my own company, I looked at, shall I do sales, shall I do lettings? Shall I do it as part of a franchise or go on my own? There were so many different choices. And I really looked into not only the monetary kind of reward on a monthly basis, but the longevity as well. And I decided that actually concentrating on lettings was something that when I came to sell, I'd also be able to obviously get a decent sum for it at the end. So I started Neighbour Homes Lettings back in, I want to say, 2011. So yeah, a little while ago now. Started it from my friend's garage. So yeah, literally sat on a chair in his garage, going out leaflet dropping and kind of really trying to be a bit different. We were the first hybrid agency, pretty much of its kind, I suppose, obviously before Purple Bricks and things like that, where we didn't have like a high street office. So we had this, he was doing sales, I was doing lettings, and running it from his garage. So thank God for the internet. We were managing about 100 properties by the end of the first year, and it was me and one part-time member of staff.
Wow.
So that was really, really busy.
What was your trick for building up from 0 to 100?
A lot of it was word of mouth. And I think, again, knowing about marketing now and knowing how the internet works and kind of getting leads that way, it was a very different time back then. I'd already been in the industry for about 10 years, I suppose, so I was quite well known within the industry. We started off almost as a bit of a budget pricing kind of strategy, really, I suppose. So we started at 7%, which, again, this was going back some years, but most of the other agents, I would say, were 8 to 10% in the city. So, again, because our overheads were less, we were in a service office, and it was just me and one part-time member of staff. Again, we kind of went in with a lower pricing strategy to start with, which isn't necessarily what I would do now, but at the time I said obviously that was the strategy we went for. But again, I think our ethics and our values and our customer service really shone through. I left corporate wanting to be able to provide a decent service for landlords like myself and other friends that I had, that people could really rely on, where you were part of the family, that you were not just a number and a email address. So I really concentrated heavily on giving the landlords a really good service. Obviously, when I first started, properties were quite difficult to let. It was a very different industry to what it is now. We weren't getting 80 or 90 applications. No. It was quite tricky, Jane. And I said, obviously, we were still utilising the local newspaper for most of the advertising. So it was still back in the day when, Rightmove wasn't a thing when we first started. And I said it was probably only 4 or 5 years in that we actually started advertising on the big portals, the Zoopla, Prime Location and stuff. So it was very much using Excel spreadsheets, a 1 to 31 day system, and word of mouth, I suppose. So it was quite a different time.
So if you were going to do it again now, how would you build up a portfolio from scratch?
Understanding what landlords want. I think a lot of people go in with a price kind of strategy, but actually a lot of it's the peace of mind, it's the communication, it's offering a service where they can actually give advice to the landlords to help grow their portfolios. And I think that's kind of where I went with it for the last couple of years, was really to help and advise the landlords that weren't local to be able to build their portfolios, to help source properties for them, to get the additional works done that were needed to realise their better rents, etc., etc. So to give a fuller service than just collecting the rent and dealing with the maintenance. I do an awful lot of networking nowadays, and I think the networking really, really works. I think obviously who you know and who knows you is a really, really important thing. I do a lot of podcasts, I do a lot of radio stuff, TV stuff. I'm very well known within the community, and I think obviously that has really, really helped, because reputation, I think, is everything in this industry. And when you're starting out and you're an unknown, it can be very, very difficult to try and build that. But I think, as I said, it's getting great testimonials, it's utilising social media. I think that's really, really good to be able to showcase what you're doing, show behind the scenes, talk about your values, talk about how you differ as an agency to perhaps obviously the run-of-the-mill or the high street kind of brands that are out there. But I think, utilising SEO, having a great website, being, I think, values and people-led as well, I think, because at the end of the day, yes, we are dealing with properties, but we're dealing with people's homes and people's wealth, which are the two most important things that obviously we can look after, really, isn't it? So, I think the customer service needs to be forefront. People need to be singing about how awesome you are. And then, Jane, the more people that refer you in, the better, really. So, we do a lot of referrals. We have a lot of people recommending our services. But also we're not shy to shout about how awesome we are. I think that's a really good idea, isn't it?
Well, if you don't do it, nobody's going to do it, are they?
This is the thing, isn't it? When I first started, I was absolutely petrified, Jane. The first time I was in the newspaper, I was mortified. I was like, oh my gosh, everyone's going to see my face. And I did some training with, do you know Sally Lawson? Have you come across Sally Lawson? Of course, yeah. Yes. So I did some training with Sally Lawson before she started her agent Rainmaker, and went up to Wolverhampton. And one of the bits of advice she said to me, she said, Jo, you need to make your face the face of property in Plymouth. I was like, holy schmolies. And at the time I wasn't very confident. I wasn't very kind of outspoken, but it really made me realise that people buy from people that they know, like and trust. And I think being the face of your business is really important.
And you'd started off your agency called Nova.
Nova Homes, yeah, Nova Homes.
Nova Homes. So it was even more important, really, that they could attach a face to that, because, me and Phil kind of had a bit of a shortcut because we used our names, which, it's usually short-term gain for long-term pain, because it's still Ashdown and Jones, of course. But when you're not called your business name, you have to really attach a face to that name.
I think it's quite important, isn't it? And like I said, when I first started, it was just me running the business. I was doing the admin, I was doing the payments, I was doing the viewings, the valuations, the photography. I was doing everything. And while I love a variety of things, I think when you get to that growth stage and when you get to scaling the business up, you can't do everything. And it became quite difficult, I found, because everyone wanted to speak to me. When they were ringing up, they were like, can I speak to Jo? And I was like, I just haven't got the time to be able to deal with every single client that was coming in. And actually allowing my staff to take that lead as well and be the front of the business. And I think, obviously, this is one of the reasons why I sold it in the end, to be fair, because I ended up taking more of a back seat with the business. I was doing a lot of the valuations, the take-ons, the a kind of big portfolio, growths, etc., etc. But I ended up just sitting in the office all day, just doing HR and kind of dealing with complaints that were coming through from tenants. And I was like, this is not what I quite signed up for. And I really loved being out in the properties, kind of get my hands dirty a little bit. And as I said, yeah, after 9 years of owning the business, I decided to sell it.